Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. A recent petty revenge story made me think about this experience from my college years, and this one definitely went beyond petty revenge into professional territory. It's a long one, so settle in. In 2022, just before my senior year of college, I turned 21 and bought a car with money I'd saved from my part-time job as a barista. I wanted one earlier, but my mom was completely against it, so at 21, in my big act of rebellion, I went and bought one anyway. A few months later, Aunt Regina, we called her Reggie, suddenly quit her job in California and moved in with us in Colorado, without her car. She claimed it was cheaper to wait until spring to have it shipped because of seasonal transport rates or something. Reggie was notoriously stingy and had a habit of taking advantage of people. "You'll need to share your car with Aunt Reggie until hers arrives," my mom announced one evening. "But Mom, I just got it," I protested. "Sarah, she needs it for job interviews, and you can take the campus shuttle," Mom replied, already walking away from the conversation. The arrangement seemed completely unfair, but I agreed to let her use it for appointments since I could take the shuttle. I just needed advance notice because the shuttle picked up super early and I valued my sleep. The real problem started with my alarm clock. Reggie's room shared a wall with mine, and apparently my alarm was disrupting her precious beauty sleep. "Can't you just go to bed earlier and wake up naturally?" she'd snap at breakfast. "Some of us actually have places to be," I'd mutter under my breath. Our daily schedule went something like this. 6 a.m., Mom leaves for her consulting job 6:15 a.m. My alarm goes off if taking the shuttle 6:45 a.m. My alarm goes off if driving 6:45 a.m. Leave for shuttle 7:15 a.m. Leave if driving never o'clock. Aunt Reggie's unemployed self needs to be anywhere. One morning, Reggie cornered Mom in the kitchen. "Why can't you just wake Sarah up before you leave?" Mom just sighed. "Get some earplugs, Reggie. Work it out between yourselves." That's when things got weird. I started waking up late, missing my shuttle. Turned out Reggie was sneaking into my room at night to mess with my alarm. I caught her red-handed one night, standing over my bed like something out of a horror movie. "What are you doing?" I screamed. "Oh, I must have been sleepwalking," she said innocently. "Sleepwalking right to my alarm clock? Really?" Mom, ever the conflict avoider, actually bought that excuse. I tried supergluing my alarm clock to the outlet, not my brightest moment. When that didn't work, I started keeping it under my pillow. Reggie's response? She'd sprint to our only bathroom the moment my alarm went off. "Oh, sorry," she'd say through the door while I waited desperately. "Didn't know you needed it." Then she'd emerge at exactly the wrong time, forcing me to rush, and somehow my car would mysteriously disappear. "You must not have been listening when I said I needed it today," she'd say smugly. The situation with my car got worse. She'd return it running on fumes, forcing me to fill up before I could go anywhere. Twice she called roadside assistance after miscalculating how far she could drive on empty. I started keeping my keys with me constantly, even in the shower, but Reggie had an answer for that too. She borrowed my car for a job interview and got copies made. "What's wrong with sharing?" she taunted when I confronted her. "You're just a selfish little princess." "That's my car," I said firmly. "You have no right to copy my keys. Use it again and there will be consequences." She laughed. "What are you going to do about it?" Turns out, quite a lot. My best friend Emma's dad was a police sergeant and I'd known him since middle school. When my car disappeared the next morning, I made a call. "Hey, Uncle Mark, my car's been stolen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It has GPS tracking." The rest played out exactly as I'd hoped. They found her at a Target parking lot, where she apparently threw quite a tantrum. Result? Charges for grand theft auto, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and driving with an expired California license. When Mom finally noticed Reggie's absence days later, I simply said, "Someone stole my car, so I called the police. I handled it myself, like you always say I should." The aftermath was beautiful. Reggie's savings went to legal fees and her teaching career, over. No school district wants a teacher with assault and grand theft auto on their record. The last few months before I graduated were blissfully quiet. Years later, Emma's dad told me Reggie had a history of bullying younger relatives, but I was the first one to fight back effectively. And that's how my aunt's need to control my alarm clock led to the end of her teaching career. The next one is an entitled people's story. I live on a private dirt road deep in the woods of rural Vermont. My family has owned this 50-acre property since the 1950s when my grandfather bought it. The road leading to my house is about a mile long and connects to the main county road. It's technically a private road that I maintain myself, though I let my 3 neighbors who live further down use it to access their properties. Everything was peaceful until about 6 months ago when a developer bought a large parcel of land adjacent to mine and started building an upscale housing development called Forest View Estates. They cleared about 100 acres of woods and put in 30 cookie-cutter McMansions starting at $800,000 each. The development has its own homeowners association with strict rules about everything from mailbox designs to what color you can paint your house. The problem started when Karen, the homeowners association president, showed up at my door one Saturday morning. "Hi, I'm Karen Matthews, president of the Forest View Estates Homeowners Association," she said with a fake smile. "We noticed your rustic property borders our development." I nodded. "Yes, I'm aware. Been here long before your development existed." "Well, we have some concerns about security. Our residents have reported seeing suspicious vehicles using your dirt road. We'd like to install a security gate at the entrance and have our private security patrol it." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Excuse me, this is my private road. You have absolutely no authority here." Karen's smile tightened. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. Forest View Estates has certain standards we need to maintain. Having an unsecured access point next to our development poses risks. We're willing to cover the costs of the gate and security. And I wasn't clear enough. This is my property, my road. You have zero jurisdiction here. Your development doesn't even connect to my road." "Sir, we're trying to be reasonable here. Our homeowners association board has voted on this measure. We'll need you to comply." I laughed. "Your homeowners association board has no power over my property. None. Zero. Nada. I suggest you leave now." Karen's face reddened. "We'll see about that. Expect to hear from our attorneys." True to her word, a week later, I received a certified letter from some fancy law firm representing the Forest View Estates Homeowners Association. They demanded I cease and desist, allowing unauthorized access to my private road, and threatened legal action if I didn't comply with their security requirements. I took the letter to my friend Steve, who happens to be a real estate attorney. He howled with laughter when he read it. "This is complete BS," he said. "They have absolutely no legal standing here. Your road predates their development by decades, and they have no easement rights or jurisdiction whatsoever." Steve drafted a response letter basically telling them to pound sand. We thought that would be the end of it. We were wrong. A few days later, I came home to find two guys in security uniforms standing at the entrance to my road with a pickup truck. They had construction equipment and what looked like posts for a gate. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I asked, blocking their access with my truck. "Homeowners Association hired us to install a security gate," one replied. "Got the work order right here. This is my private property. You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the sheriff." They looked uncertain and called someone, probably Karen. A few minutes later, she came speeding up in her white Range Rover. "What seems to be the problem here?" she demanded. "The problem is you're trying to illegally construct something on my property," I said. "Pack up and leave, or law enforcement gets involved." "We have every right to secure this access point," Karen insisted. "Our homeowners association board has no authority here," I interrupted. "This is private property. You're all trespassing. Final warning before I call the cops." Karen glared but told the contractors to leave. As she got back in her Range Rover, she spat. "This isn't over." She was right about that. Over the next few weeks, their rent-a-cop security guards kept trying to patrol my road despite my repeated warnings to stay off my property. I put up no trespassing signs and private road, no homeowners association access signs, which kept mysteriously disappearing. I installed security cameras and caught Karen herself tearing down my signs late one night. I filed a police report for vandalism and trespassing with the footage as evidence. The deputies gave Karen a stern warning, but she was undeterred. The Homeowners Association's next brilliant move was to send letters to my 3 neighbors who used my road telling them they needed to register with the Homeowners Association for authorized access permits. My neighbors were furious. They'd been using this road for decades through verbal agreements with my family. I assured them nothing would change. They were still welcome to use the road as always. Time to go nuclear. I contacted the County Zoning Board and Planning Commission to report that Forest View Estates was violating several ordinances with their development. Turns out their fancy clubhouse was built too close to the property line, they'd exceeded permitted lot coverage ratios, and their stormwater management system wasn't up to code. The county started hitting them with daily fines until violations were corrected. Karen showed up at my door again, this time practically foaming at the mouth. "You vindictive bastard!" she screamed. "Do you know how much money these fines are costing us?" Sounds like a you problem, I replied calmly. Maybe focus on fixing your own violations instead of harassing me about my private road. Our property values are at stake here. We can't have some hillbilly back road running right next to our luxury development. First, this hillbilly back road was here decades before your overpriced cookie-cutter houses. Second, your property values aren't my problem. Third, if you or anyone from your homeowners association sets foot on my property again, I'll press charges for criminal trespassing. She stormed off, but the harassment continued. Their security guards would park at the end of my road and take photos of everyone coming and going. They'd follow my neighbors and write down license plate numbers. Time for the next phase of my plan. I hired a surveyor to officially mark my property lines. Turns out their development had encroached on my land in several spots. Their fancy entrance sign, part of their perimeter fence, and several landscaping features were actually on my property. I had Steve send them a formal letter demanding removal of all encroaching structures within 30 days or face legal action. The Homeowners Association board called an emergency meeting. Through one of my neighbors who'd infiltrated their Facebook group, I learned they were in a panic. The county fines were mounting. They'd have to rebuild part of their clubhouse to comply with setback requirements. And now they faced having to move their entrance sign and fencing. But Karen wasn't done yet. She started spreading rumors that I was running some kind of criminal enterprise from my property. That's why I was so secretive and resistant to security patrols. She claimed she'd seen suspicious late-night activities and strange vehicles. What she actually saw was me working on my truck in my garage at night. I work odd hours. And my neighbor's logging trucks. He has a legitimate forestry business. The Homeowners Association called an anonymous tip into the drug task force about suspected drug manufacturing on my property. The deputies who showed up recognized me. I'd helped them clear fallen trees from the road during the last big storm. "Sorry about this," one deputy said. "We have to check out all tips, but we know it's bogus. That Karen lady's been calling us non-stop trying to cause trouble." I showed them around my property. No meth lab, just my workshop where I restore classic cars as a hobby. They apologized again for the hassle. I'd had enough. Time to end this once and for all. I had Steve file a harassment lawsuit against the Homeowners Association and Karen personally. We had dozens of documented instances of trespassing, vandalism, false police reports, and attempting to interfere with my property rights. We also filed complaints with the State Attorney General's office about their pattern of harassment and abuse of Homeowners Association authority. The Homeowners Association's lawyer finally realized what a mess they were in. They faced major liability, their insurance wouldn't cover harassment claims, and Karen's actions had exposed them to potential punitive damages. 2 days later, I got a call from their attorney requesting a meeting to discuss settlement. I agreed to meet at Steve's office rather than giving them another excuse to come onto my property. Karen was there with 2 other Homeowners Association board members and their lawyer. Gone was her usual arrogant attitude. She looked positively miserable. Their attorney laid out their proposal. They would pay to fix all their code violations, remove the encroaching structures, and pay my legal fees. In exchange, I would drop the harassment lawsuit. "Not good enough," Steve said. "My client has endured months of harassment, vandalism, and false accusations. We want written agreements that the Homeowners Association will never attempt to assert any authority over his property, plus damages for all the trouble they've caused." The Homeowners Association. Board members looked ready to agree, but Karen couldn't help herself. "This is extortion," she burst out. "We were just trying to protect our community." "Karen," their lawyer said sharply, "please don't speak. We negotiated for 2 hours. In the end, we reached an agreement. The Homeowners Association would pay $75,000 in damages, plus all my legal fees. They would sign a legally binding agreement never to attempt to assert any authority over my property or road. Their security personnel were banned from my property. Karen would step down as Homeowners Association president. They would issue a formal written apology. Any future harassment would result in automatic damages of $10,000 per incident. "One more thing," I added. "I want it in writing that I can do whatever legal activities I want on my property without Homeowners Association interference. If I want to park a dozen junker cars in my yard or paint my house hot pink, that's my business." Karen looked like she was going to have an aneurysm, but they agreed. The settlement agreement was signed the following week. Karen resigned as Homeowners Association president and put her house up for sale shortly after. Apparently living next to my unsecured property was too much for her. The new homeowners association board has been much more reasonable. They fixed their violations, moved their entrance sign and fencing, and haven't bothered me since. My neighbors and I continue to use my road as we always have. I used part of the settlement money to install heavy-duty gates with security cameras at both ends of my road. Not because the homeowners association wanted it, but because I wanted to ensure no one could try this nonsense again. I also donated a portion to a local property rights advocacy group that helps people fight against homeowners association overreach. My property remains a proud homeowners association free zone. I park my project cars wherever I want, keep chickens in my yard, and generally enjoy the freedom of living without ridiculous restrictions on my property rights. The best part? Forest View Estates' property values have actually gone up since all this happened. Turns out fixing their code violations and having proper setbacks was more important than harassing their neighbors. I still see Karen occasionally at the local grocery store. She always turns her cart around and goes the other way. Fine by me. I've got better things to do than deal with entitled homeowners association presidents who don't understand property rights. My grandfather always said good fences make good neighbors. I'd add that good lawyers, security cameras, and a backbone to stand up to bullies helps too. The woods are peaceful again, just the way I like it. Epilogue, 6 months later. The story of how I stood up to the homeowners association spread through the rural communities in our area. I've had several people reach out for advice dealing with similar situations. Steve and I have helped a few other property owners assert their rights against aggressive homeowners associations trying to overstep their boundaries. Forest View Estates got a complete management makeover. The new board focuses on actually maintaining their development instead of harassing neighbors. They even apologized again at their annual meeting for the previous board's behavior. Karen moved to Florida. Good riddance. Her house sold to a lovely retired couple who wave when they drive by and have never once complained about my property. My neighbors and I formed an informal road maintenance association. Completely voluntary, of course. We split costs for grading and plowing, meet occasionally for cookouts, and help each other out when needed. That's what real community looks like, not forced compliance with arbitrary rules. The gates and cameras have worked great. No more mysterious sign disappearances or trespassing security guards. I even painted one gate bright purple just because I can. The homeowners association can't say a word about it. Life is good in the woods. Sometimes standing your ground and fighting back is the only way to keep your freedom. I'm grateful I had the resources and support to do so, and I'll keep helping others defend their property rights whenever I can. The next one is a malicious compliances story. The context: I, 35F, live in a big city in Western Europe. After graduating college, I was hired as an office assistant in a big company. Let's call it Happy Place. I did my last internship as a student there, and it went so well that I got hired just a few weeks after getting my master's degree. Over the next 10 years, I worked my way up from an assistant to office manager to head of one of the biggest departments. I was not paid a lot of money, but it was above average and the benefits were great. But the main reason I stayed for so long was the people who worked there. Over the year, I've made quite a few friends there, and by the year 2020, I was one of the most experienced people working in Happy Place. My colleagues often came to me for an advice about how to do this or that, and I also had a great relationship with the big bosses. And the cherry on top was that I had the best boss someone can hope for. Let's call her Maggie. Maggie was 10 years older than me, and she was Wonder Woman. She is nice, professional, cool, helpful, and has a heart of gold. I've worked with her during my whole time at Happy Place. In the last 4 years, she was my direct supervisor. I loved her. Then, in 2020, a few things happened almost at the same time, and over the course of 6 months, Happy Place turned into Sad Place. First, the company hired a new HR lady, Karen. She was the worst. She treated everyone below her level of responsibilities, which is pretty much 99% of the staff, as if they were lesser people, talked down to everyone, and constantly made changes in the HR policies. She implemented quite a few new rules which lead to us losing some of the benefits that we liked, like free lunches, paid time off to go to the doctor's office during office hours, etc. But the CEO of the company trusted her for some reason, and soon he stopped taking meeting with the staff, making Karen the only person who could make decisions regarding the staff, which meant that Noon could actually complain about her, and we slowly started feeling helpless. Maggie was promoted to a different field, the one she actually wanted to work in, so I cannot be mad at her for leaving. And she got replaced by Susan as my new supervisor. Susan was cool, but she was my age and with less experience, which did not make much sense. So even though on paper she was the one in charge, I was the one constantly explaining to her how things worked and what needed to be done, while she took the credit. And lastly, COVID. Our line of work was highly impacted by the pandemic, so the whole year 2020 I was working under an enormous amount of stress, taking almost no vacation time, doing my job and some of Susan's job, as at some point she went on a medical leave, and some of my coworkers' jobs, as some colleagues cracked under the tension and quit, but no one got hired to replace them. But despite all of the hard work, I did not receive any pandemic-related bonus, which was weird since some of my coworkers let it slip that they got a €1,000 bonus for achievements during the pandemic. The compliance. So, given all the events of 2020 and January 2021, I've decided that enough was enough. When it was time for my annual review, I've decided that I would negotiate better conditions for myself because as much as I loved my job and the people I've worked for, I couldn't keep working so much for so little pay. As Susan was still on a medical leave, Karen was the one who did my annual review, despite the fact that I've only met her a few times and we've never directly worked together. In preparation for the meeting, I've made a list of the things I've been putting up with and a list of reasons why I should get a slight pay bump. I was asking for a 15% pay increase, but was happy to accept a 10%. It was not about the money. It was about knowing that there was at least a chance that management valued me as an employee and that I was not just some sucker who did so much for not even a thank you. After making my case to Karen and carefully explaining to her what my job was and what I was actually doing, I asked her the dreaded question. She looked at me, smiled, and said, "OP, I appreciate everything you've been doing for the company and we value you as an employee. But your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I was speechless. I admit I was so angry and hurt that I felt tears coming up to my eyes. But I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and said, "Thank you for your input, Karen, but I cannot keep working in these conditions. It's not worth it." Karen rolled her eyes and replied, "Then you can quit, but I will be sorry to see you go." And quit, I did. You see, there were two things Karen did not know. First, as explained, I was a highly valued employee with a great reputation and over 10 years of experience in the field. In our field, reputation is important, and for the last 2 years, I've been receiving job offers from competitors. I always refused because I loved working for Happy Place. But since the events of 2020, I started taking interviews, checking what else was out there. And just before my meeting with Karen, I did an interview with Cool Company, who offered me a 60% raise to do the same job as I did for happyplace.sec on comma. Remember how I said I took almost no vacation days in 2020? So by January of 2021, I had over 2 months of paid leave available. I checked with the HR, not Karen, the week before my annual review, and they confirmed to me in writing that I was free to take my vacation days whenever I wanted. So I did exactly what Karen told me to do. I quit. I put in my 2 months notice and took my 2 months vacation, which meant that I came to work for only 1 day to clean out my office and say goodbye before leaving for good. I felt bad because I left so many of my colleagues in a really bad position since they now had to do my job. But they all assured me that they understood and that they would have done the same thing. After my 2 months paid vacation, I started working at Cool Company, and I've been here ever since. The aftermath, I kept in touch with a few friends from Happy Place, and they regularly informed me of what was going on over there. It seems that me quitting was the push that many of my coworkers needed to also make the final leap and quit. As I said, the conditions went from great to bad since Karen took office. Also, the fact that I quit so abruptly got the attention of the CEO as we had a good relationship. He asked Maggie, who was aware of the whole story with Karen, about it, and she told him the truth. About me not getting the COVID bonus, about Karen speaking down to staff members, about her telling me to quit if I wanted to. The CEO finally opened his eyes and launched an investigation into Karen's actions. He personally did interviews with some staff members and heard stories about her from people from many different departments. He also investigated the COVID bonus story, and it turns out she only gave the COVID bonus to her friends from different departments, and a very generous one to herself. Plus, since I've quit, no one was actually able to do my job, and the fact that Karen was responsible for me leaving made her responsible for the consequences. So after reviewing everything, the CEO decided to terminate Karen's contract. Rumor has it the whole staff of Happy Place celebrated this joyous occasion. The cherry on top. Last week, my boss at Cool Company walked into my office and said, "OP, you know Jen from HR is retiring soon, right? We did interviews to replace her, and one of the candidates is Karen. She seems competent, but asks for quite a lot of money. You and her work together, right? What's she like? Do you think she deserves to be paid more than we initially offered?" I said, "Boss, you have a few minutes? Great. Let me tell you a story." After hearing my very honest opinion of Karen, Boss Man laughed and said, "Okay, good to know. I think we will tell her that she is not the right fit for us." Thanks, OP. As soon as boss man left my office, I sent an email to my friend Lori from HR, who was in charge of replying to candidates. I also told her the story and asked her to keep me informed if there is any development with the whole Karen applies to cool company thing. A few hours later, I got an email from Lori. Turns out, she copied me to her official reply to Karen. It read, "Dear Karen, thank you for your interest in working for Cool Company. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that in our opinion, your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I brought Lori a big chocolate cookie the next day. Thank you all for reading. Have a great day, and remember, don't let Karens ruin your sense of self-worth. Update. Hey guys, thank you for all your comments and support. I have a small update I thought you might want to know. The CEO from Happy Place approached me last week to ask me to come back and work for him. He offered me more money but didn't really apologize for what he let happen to me and the entire team. I said no, because even though Karen is no longer there, things haven't really changed, at least not for the better. Almost all of the good people from that place have left for other opportunities since my departure, even those who have been there for 20 years. That includes my friend Maggie, who now works with me at Cool Company. I could not be happier. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.